Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. Ba'd. This is a new lecture of our commentary on Bulugh al-Maram by Imam al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala. And last time I mentioned a long hadith of the charity of camels, the camel charity. And actually today I just want to give a summary about that so that you can understand the whole hadith, because it's a long hadith that needs some clarifications. So therefore, we have to agree that zakah means purifying yourself. Purifying yourself here is a figurative purification, which means it's purifying yourself by giving charities to the needies that Allah Almighty mentioned in the Quran, which are 88 categories. So we have 8 categories that we have to give these, or we can give, not we have to give, because scholars, some of them say you have to distribute the money or the wealth on these 8 categories, and the majority of scholars say no, you don't have to do that. You can just give some of them, and that's it. You don't have to give it to all people, all 8 categories. If you give it only to one category, that's fine. So we spoke, or the hadith spoke in the beginning about the camel's charities. So when are we supposed to give our charities? Well, actually, you have to give your charities when you have 2 conditions in, because there are lots of things that you have to give charities from. First of all, gold, so the money, and gold and silver, because in the ancient days, money was made from gold or silver. Nowadays, we have these papers that cover the wealth of any country or any person. So the paper money now, the banknotes and stuff like that, they have the same equality or the same rulings of gold and silver. So this is the first category. The second category is flocks. And we have 3 kinds of flocks, or actually we can say 4. We have camels, cows, sheep, goats. So these are 4 categories. Then, so these are, so you have wealth, money, gold and silver, flocks. And we have all what the land gives. So you have these types of these grains and stuff like that. Then you have what are the other categories? So you have the grains and stuff like that, and then you have Muhammad. Okay, these are the main categories that you give zakat from. You give zakat from. So okay, wait a second. Okay. So now the first category, or the first kind of things that we give zakat from is the flocks. And the flocks here we have the camels. It's the first type, which means that if you have a fixed number of camels, then you are supposed to give zakat from. Okay. So therefore, uh, what is the number of the number is 5 camels. The first thing, so if you have 1 camel, there's no zakat. 2 camels, no zakat. 3 camels, no zakat as well. Then if you have 5 camels, then you are supposed to get from it the zakat. Okay? Allah said Muhammad. So therefore, what do you get out of one? What do you get out of one? Out of 5? Out of 5, from 5 to 9, you give only 1 ram, only 1 ram, sheep. From 10 to 14, you give 2 sheeps. From 15 to 19, okay, the 2 conditions are Bulugh nisab, which means a fixed number. Second thing, hawalan al-hawl, which means 1 lunar year has to pass on the things that you have. These are the 2 conditions of zakat. They call it zakatul an'am, which is zakat of flocks. Okay. Okay. Now from 20 to 24, you have to give 4 sheeps. When it reaches to 25, then you are supposed to give a she camel that is in its 2nd year. And this she camel is called in Arabic bintu makhad. Why do we call it bintu makhad? It means the daughter of the camel that is pregnant. That is pregnant, which means when a camel is 2 years old, you, you
I think his internet cut out. Inshallah, he'll be back.
Did Sheikh give the number of we need of rams or sheep we need to give from 15 to 19? Was it 3? I think we skipped that part accidentally.
I think he just heard your
is
question.
that where it stopped? Is that where it stopped?
No, Sheikh, I think that's the only part. You said 15 to 19, and then you gave the number for 20 to 24, and you stopped on the meaning of bintu.
Okay, 15. From 15 to 19, it's 3 sheep. From 20 to 24, it's 4 sheep. From 25, you start giving from the camels. So from 25 to 35, you give a she camel that has 2 years, that is 2 years old, and it's called the daughter of the pregnant, which is bint makhad, which means its mother it's pregnant, and it's nearly going to deliver its baby. From 36 to 45, you have to give a she camel that is 3 years old, which means it's called bintu labun. It's the daughter of the suckling she camel, which means its mother now, it's giving breastfeeding to its baby. Okay, so it's 3 years old. Bintu labun. From 46 to 60, you have to give a she camel that is 4 years old. It's called hiqqa. That means you can now ride it, drive it, and it can get married. So it's called hiqqa. That means it's something that has the right to do so and so. That's from the word haqq. Okay, so hiqqa. So therefore, it's 4 years old. Then from 61 to 75, you give a she camel. Pay attention. All of them, notice that all of them are she camels, not he camels. Why? Because when you give the poor guy a she camel, it fertilizes. He just needs to search for a male, and then that's it. He would have lots of new camels. Are solving a problem for him. You're giving it a she camel so that it becomes more and more, and it gives them more other camels. Okay, so from 61 to 75, you are supposed to give a she camel that has 5 years old, and this is called jada'a. Jada'a means it dropped its teeth. So it's changing its teeth. So therefore, yes, so therefore, from 76 to 90, now you are going to give 2 she camels that have 3 years old. 2 she camels that have 3 years old. And from um, from 91 to not to 120, you are going to give 2 she camels that have 4 years old, that are 4 years old. From 121 to 129, you're going to give 3 she camels that have 3 years old. Yeah, 3 years old. Okay, 3 she camels that are 3 years old. From 140 to 149, you are going to give 2 camels that have 5 years old, 4 years old, and 1 she camel that has 3 years old. From 150 to 159, you are going to give 3 she camels that have 4 years old. From 160 to 169, 4 she camels that have 3 years old. 170 to 179, 3 camels that have 3 years old, plus 1 that has 4 years old. 190 to 199, 3 she camels that have 4 years old, plus 1 has 3 years old. From 200 until 209, you are going to give 4 camels, she camels that have 4 years old, or 5 she camels that have 3 years old. And after that, every 50 camels, you are going to give 1 she camel that has 4 years old, and every 40, you are going to give a she camel that has 3 years old. So therefore, if you have the number of 300, for example, let us say 300. What does 300 give? What does 300 give? How many 40s and how many 50s does it have? Can anybody answer me? If you have 300 camels, so 300 camels means how many 50s does it have in it? Or how many 40s and 50s does it have in it? It's 6, okay? So therefore, in this case, if it's 6, therefore, every 50, you have to give a she camel that has 4 years old. And that means you are going to give here 6 camels that have 4 years old. Is that clear? Is that clear?
Nah.
حقاق. Yes, so 6 حقاق. Exactly. So last time, Brother Abu Lut gave a table about this. You can go back to that. You can go back to the table, which is so clear, alhamdulillah. Muhammad. Here you have these numbers, you can benefit from them. Okay? Can you give a camel older than the one required? Okay, leave that. We'll speak about that later, inshallah. We'll speak about that later, inshallah, okay? طيب.
Sheikh, your audio is cutting out a little bit. We can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Now, is it clear?
Yes.
وعن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعثه إلى اليمن فأمره أن يأخذ من كل 30 بقرة تبيعا وتبيعة أو تبيعة ومن كل 40 مسنة ومن كل حالم دينارا أو عدله معافريا. رواه الخمسة واللفظ لأحمد وحسنه الترمذي وحسنه الترمذي وأشار إلى اختلاف في الوصف وصححه ابن خزيمة وابن حبان والحاكم. Narrated Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, the Prophet ﷺ sent him to Yemen and ordered him to take a one-year old male or female calf for every 30 cattle, and a cow in its 3rd year. Every 40, and 1 dinar for every adult. Disbeliever or jizya, or as jizya, or clothes of equivalence, value of equivalent value, manufactured in Yemen, reported by the Khamsa, the 5 narrators. And the wording is pointed, yeah. And at-Tirmidhi graded it as good, but pointed it to difference about whether or not it is mawsul, which is broken chain, Ibn Habib and Hukm. Okay, what is this? Yes, about whether or not it's mawsul. Ibn Hibban, not Ibn Habib, Ibn Hibban and Hakim graded it sahih, authentic. This hadith is speaking about the charities of cows. What is this hadith speaking about? Well, it says here that for the cows, its fixed number that you have to give is from 1 to 9 to 29, nothing. So the first fixed number is 30. If you have 30 cows, then you are supposed to give from 30 to 29. Okay? So from 300, no, not from 300, from 30 to 39, you have to give tabiya. What is tabiya? It's a cow or a small heifer that is 2 years old. Okay, 2 years old. From 40 to 49, musinna. It's a she cow that finished 2 years, and it starts the third year. So it's 3 years old. When they say that this camel or this cow, when they say the cow gives, when they say the cow yeah, we say tabi'a. We say tabi'a is a cow that is 2 years old. Okay? No matter it's female or male, no matter it's female or male. Now from 40 to 59, you give a cow called musinna. It's 3 years old. So the first one is it's tabi'a is 2 years old. Musinna is 3 years old. Now from 60 to 69, you have to give tabi'an or tabi'atan, or he the same, no problem. Which means you give two cows that have 2 years old, that are 2 years old. And from 70 to 79, you give musinna wa tabi'a. You give 2 years and 3 years old. 1 2 years, 3 years old. From 80 to 89, you give musinnatan, two cows that have 3 years old. From 90 to 99, you give three atbi'ah that have 3 years old. From 100 to 109, you give musinna wa tabi'an, one that has 3 years and two that have 2 years old. And from 120 to 129, you give three musinnat or arba'at atbi'ah, which means three camels that have 3 years old, or four camel, or not camels, cows that have 2 years old. And after that, every 30 you give tabir or tabi'a, male or female, which are 3 years old, and every 40 you give, that have 2 years old, and every 40 you give musinna, which has 3 years old. So therefore, let us imagine that you have 180, 180, for example. 180, how many do you have to give? 180. Wait a second. This one, I sent you wait a second. I tried to send you a table here, but it didn't go. Maybe it'll go right now.
I posted the tables on our communication channel, Sheikh.
Wait a second. Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is, I divided it so that you can see the camels. Now, okay, four cows, 3 years old. or 5. Huh? Or cows 3 years old. Wait a second. No, cows. I'm not speaking about camels. I'll give you now the Nisab al-Baqarah. It's easy. Okay. Okay, now see, you see? Did you see the table that I set right now? So therefore, in the end, so the tabir is that has 2 years old. Musinna has 3 years old. Okay. So he says in the end, every 30 you give tabir or tabia, which is 2 years old, and every 40 you give musinna, which has 3 years old. Okay. Is that clear? Students, is that clear?
Yes,
So,
Sheikh.
oh, other students, is everything clear? Okay. Fine. Very good. Now, let us read hadith. وعن عمرو بن شعيب عن أبيه عن جده قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تؤخذ صدقات المسلمين. Yeah, let me just give information about this hadith. Yes, I still didn't continue the hadith. Okay, now this hadith gives us several rulings. It means, this hadith says that it's obligatory for people who have cows to give their charities when they have 30 cows. They have 30 cows. Okay? So, Nisabul Baqar is 30 cows. What you give in 30 cows that you had and a 1 lunar year passed on them, you give a tabir or tabia. And tabir is a cow 2 years old, which means it completed the first year. Now it's in the second year. When you reach 40, you give musinna, which means that it has 2 years and now it's in the third year. So it means it's three years old. This is something that all scholars agree upon. Actually, Ibn Hazm rahimahullah mentioned several opinions about Nisab al-Baqar, but this is what most scholars say from all madhahib. Okay? And this hadith means that if all the cows are female, if all cows are female, you can get the zakat no matter it's male or female. That's up to you. Or if all of them are male, you can give male or female the same. Because when he says 30 or 40, he didn't say male or female. He just said cows. It can be male or female, okay? So therefore, in the cows, the situation is different from the situation of camels, which you're not allowed to give except the females, unless they're there, if you don't have that, okay? So therefore, this is the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. But Imam Malik says, if all of them are female, you are supposed to give only female because that would be more beneficial for the needies, which they can take from its milk and they can have other cows from it when they just get a male ox for it. This hadith speaks about taking the jizya. The jizya is a ransom of money that the non-Muslims give when they live between Muslims because Muslims are protecting them. So the Islamic State, when it protects non-Muslims, they pay this, if we can say, if we can speak about it, it's a specific tax that non-Muslims give. It's called jizya because Muslims protect them and because uh, they don't participate in the Muslim army. They are protected. And that's why if Muslims cannot protect them, they are excused and they're not supposed to give this money because Muslims can protect them. You see? So therefore, we are not supposed to force them to become Muslim, but we are supposed to protect them, and they have to give us this ransom of money because we are protecting them. Okay, is this clear? And here the hadith says that this ransom of money is not taken except from every adult male from the non-Muslims, and it's taken only one time in the whole year, 1 dinar. What is dinar? It's a golden coin of money, which is uh, four uh, four and 1/4 of 4 grams and 1/4 one no uh, 4 and 24 of gold 1 gram 4 grams of gold. Muhammad. Yes, exactly. Of gold, pure gold. So that's a coin that is supposed to be given, or that ransom of money is supposed to be given the whole year on every male that becomes adult, that reaches the puberty age, and because he's ready to fight. So because he doesn't participate in the army, he just gives this ransom of money. Now scholars say this is not something that is fixed. It's just what is made in that era. And that's why here he says, or anything equal to it from the clothes. Why did he say clothes? Because Arabs or Muslims in those days didn't have any commodities or clothes or stuff like that. So they preferred to take, instead of taking those money, or because people maybe they don't have money and they have clothes, they prefer to take clothes than taking money. Okay? And that's why he says, the commentators say that ransom is not something fixed. It's something that goes back to the governments and the era and the time, and it goes to a lot of things, a lot of وعن عمرو بن شعيب عن أبيه عن جده رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تؤخذ صدقات المسلمين على مياههم ولأبي داود ولا تؤخذ صدقاتهم إلا في دورهم. Here he says, narrated Amr ibn Shu'aib on his father's authority from his grandfather, radiallahu anhu. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the sadaqah of the Muslims are to be received at their watering points. Reported by Ahmad, Abu Dawud also has, their sadaqat are to be recovered only in their dwellings. Now, what does he want to say here? He says that the guy that the government sends to take the zakat, he has to take the zakat from the places that the things that you give zakat from. Which means that the land that he takes from the zakat, he doesn't go far and tell them, he goes to their lands. Okay? So the zakat usually in the proper Islamic land,
Sheikh, we
to
can't hear you
go
that well.
with, now
We can't hear you that well. It's very quiet.
it's far.
It's better than
Now can you hear me?
yes.
Now it's better.
Yes.
Better. I said that the one, the guy that is responsible for gathering the zakat from people, he is supposed to go to their lands, to their farms, to their places, to their villages, not to sit somewhere and wait for people to come from him and take the zakat from them. This is the main idea of what's of this hadith. Okay? Right. And why is this hadith? Why? It's so that you don't make people suffer to give their zakats. You are supposed to make things easy for them. So you go to their lands and you give them. And they give you, not you, you stay far from them and you tell them, come to me and take. Which book was the hadith found in? No, it's in Bulugh al-Maram. Bulugh al-Maram. Okay. Here we have وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم ليس على المسلم في عبده ولا فرسه صدقة رواه البخاري ولمسلم ليس في العبد صدقة إلا صدقة. What's this hadith? Hadith says, narrated Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no sadaqah in due from a Muslim on his slave or his horse, reported by Abu Bakr. Muslim has, there is no sadaqah. There is no sadaqah on a slave except sadaqatul fitr. Right. What is this? Most of the narrations here are the same as the first one. What do we get from this hadith? This hadith means that there is no obligatory charity on horses. So even if you have 100 horses, no zakat on the horses, unless you are training and selling these horses. Okay? Therefore, you have to give zakat, urud tijara, which we're going to speak about later, inshallah. So therefore, only camels, cows, and sheep are the animals that you give zakats in them as the zakat in the livestock. Right? Now, therefore, this hadith says that there is no zakat on the horses. Now, this is something that all scholars agree about when we're speaking about horses that you earn. You earn it. It's not horses that you sell or you give people or whatever. Or horses that you use for jihad, which is horses that you fight. And the same thing for horses that you go and spend money on feeding it. Now, in case that you have horses for trading, therefore, all scholars agree about that you are supposed to give zakat in it as anything that you trade with in all types of commodities. Now, the last type of horses that there is a different, there are different opinions about, is horses that are loose in forests and stuff like that, and you earn them like people in Mongolia, in Turkestan. These guys have a lots of horses. Even in Mongolia, horses are more than human beings. Millions of horses are there. And they just go and eat from wherever they want to eat. They don't need to go, they don't need to pay money for feeding them. Okay? So, what about these types of horses? Or somebody has a farm, and in that farm, they keep on eating normally as any other animals that eat. They eat what they find. Okay? So, what's this case? Al-Imam, majority of scholars, Ahmad, Malik, Shafi, Ahmad say, no zakat on these types of horses. Even if you have no zakat. I'm just exaggerating, but this can happen. And they said the Prophet says that any Muslim doesn't have zakat on his slaves nor his horses. And therefore he says, ليس على المسلم في عبده ولا فرسه صدقة. No zakat on Muslim that concerns his slaves nor his horses. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah has another opinion about that. He says, no, if you have horses like camels, like cows, like sheep that are just eat wherever they find food, and you on having more and more from them, and you have a big farm, a big amount of them, therefore you are making them as a fertilizing wealth. And this means that you have to give zakat on. You see? He says if they're male and female, or they're only female, all of these you have to give zakat on. But if they were all male, no zakat on. Because you can't increase them. They won't increase. Okay? And he says, Allah Almighty says in the Holy Quran, خذ من أموالهم صدقة تطهرهم وتزكيهم بها. Take from them, from their wealth, from their money, or from their wealth, a charity that would purify them. And this means take from all of their wealth. It doesn't concern wealth rather than another wealth. And they said that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu mentioned, as the Bukhari and Muslim narrated that the Prophet ﷺ says when he was asked about the horses, ثم لم ينس حق الله في ظهورها ولا رقابها. He spoke about horses and he said, and he didn't forget Allah's right on its backs and on its necks. What does that mean? On its backs, which means you ride it in the sake of Allah, using it in jihad, or using it by borrowing it for your friends or your brothers, or you give it to others to ride it to go to Hajj or something like that. And its necks means the zakats. This is what they say. And they said that there's a hadith here that the Prophet ﷺ said in every she-camel that you don't pay money on its feeding 1 dinar or 10 dirhams. And actually 1 dinar, it's equal to 1 golden dinar. It was equal to 10 silver dirham. This hadith is mentioned by al-Daraqutni and al-Bayhaqi. But it's not an authentic hadith. But it's not authentic to the Prophet ﷺ, but it's authentic to some Sahaba, to Sahabi that narrated it. No sadaqah for those who own poultry. Poultry is or horses. A horse may be kept. Thank you very much, Ali. Chicken? Oh, poultry is birds. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, no zakat on chicken, no zakat on all these, unless you are selling it and buying it. Yeah, so you're using it for trade. Why not? Okay, please ask me when we finish the lecture. What about? No zakat on them. Even Hanafis say that. Hanafis only argue about horses, not all kinds of animals.
Sheikh, can you repeat that last hadith that was in Bayhaqi?
The last hadith?
Yes.
Last hadith that I just mentioned right now?
Yes, I just want to
في
find
كل
it.
فرس سائمة دينار أو 10 دراهم. أخرجه الدارقطني والبيهقي. Yes. It's in it's not authentic to the Prophet ﷺ, but it's authentic to the Sahabi that narrated it. Now, what did Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah and his friends say about ليس على المسلم في فرس في عبده ولا فرسه صدقة, which is hadith that we just mentioned in this chapter? He said, well, he's speaking about the horse that you drive. It's like you have a car. You don't give zakat on your car, but if you're making trading and selling cars, you have zakat on it. Okay? So therefore, they say that we agree. Yeah, there is no zakat on horses that you ride or horses that you use for jihad in sake of Allah. But if you're making a farm of horses, actually, you have to give zakat on. Say yeah. Okay. So it's not that the Hanafis don't pay attention to what the Prophet ﷺ said. No, hasha, astaghfirullah. They can't do that. But look how they and this is the same opinion of some Sahaba. Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu and Ibn Abbas said the same thing. Zayd ibn Thabit said, صدق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما أراد به فرس الغاز. Yeah, he said the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, yeah, he says only the truth. But he says only the truth. But he meant the horses that are prepared for jihad in the same of Allah. The hadith says that you have to give zakat al-fitr on your slave, and this is what all scholars say. You are responsible for everybody that you feed, your children, your wife, and if we're still having to slavery, you are responsible slave to give his zakat. But now, alhamdulillah, we don't have any slavery, and this is the story. But I can just tell you is that when Muslims agree and sign agreements with all other countries to finish slavery, that means we have to agree about that. So there's no slavery anymore. Okay. وعن بهز بن حكيم عن أبي عن جدي رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في كل سائمة إبل في 40 بنت لبون لا تفرق إبل عن حسابها من أعطاها مؤتجرا بها فله أجرها ومن منعها فإن آخذوها وشطر ماله عزمة من عزمات ربنا ليس لأحد منها شيء. رواه أحمد وأبو داود والنسائي وصححه الحاكم وعلق الشافعي القول به على ثبوته. Okay. Hakim, on his father's authority from his grandfather, Allah's Messenger said, for 40 pasturing camels, one she camel in her third year is to be given. The camels are not to be separated during the counting process. He who pays the zakat with the intention of getting reward will be rewarded. If anyone evades zakat, we shall take it together with half or some of his property. This being a duty from that which has been made obligatory by our Rabb, our Lord Almighty, the exalted. There is no share in its zakat for the family or Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Reported by Ahmad, Abu Dawood, Nasa'i, Hakim, graded it Sahih, authentic. Shafi'i told that acceptance of the ruling derived from this hadith depends upon its authenticity being confirmed. He says here, actually, there's something confusing here. There's something confusing here. Because he says here, في كل سائمة إبل في 40 بنت لبون. كل سائمة إبل في كل 40 بنت لبون. Okay? He says in every camel that you don't feed, that you don't pay money for, on every 40 you have bint labun. And we said from 36 to 45 we have one bint labun, which is a she camel that has 3 years old. He didn't mention 40. Where did they get 40 from? This is the strange thing in this hadith. This is the strange thing in this hadith. Strange thing in this hadith. So scholars said, well, he says that he meant 36, but he just mentioned 40 because from 36 to the end of it, you have this number. So from 36 to 45, all our 10 camels, you give this into them. Okay? So therefore, this means that you have to give this number in these number, all these numbers. And this fixed number here, it's not meant actually. Okay. Now the other thing that some scholars found it difficult to understand is that it is said we will take it from him and take half of his property, half of his wealth, or half of his camels. He says you're not allowed to take the money of somebody just like that. But this is a punishment. And there are many other narrations that give us the permission to punish somebody by taking some of his money. Okay? So therefore, you're saying, well, this is not proper. Who makes it?
Sheikh, we cannot hear you.
Yes. Oh my God. Okay.
It's a little
I
bit
need
better
to put
now.
a microphone. Now can you? It's better now?
It's still a little bit in and
Can you
out.
hear me right now?
Yes, right there we can hear you.
I'll try.
It's cutting out and again.
No, I'll put something to so that you can hear. Don't worry about that. So did you get the idea?
No.
Did you get the idea of the difficulties that made some scholars find it strange in this hadith? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Allah musta'an.
Yes, we can hear you, Sheikhuna.
Okay, I'll free hands, put the free hand. Now can you hear the voice? Is it clear?
Yes,
Is
that
the
sounds
voice now clear?
better.
Okay. Muhammad. Okay. So here he says, ولا يفرق إبل عن حسابها. The most scholars say about this that when you have two or three friends, farmers, and they added their camels or their rams or their whatever to each other, and it gives a specific number, which might let them take more zakat from it. You are not allowed to separate them to its from zakats. This is haram. This is haram, and I spoke about this before. Okay. And here when he says فَإِنَّ أَخِذُوهَا, we're going to take that. That means we're going to force this guy who is escaping from the zakat. We are going to force him to give his zakat. And more than that, we're going to punish him by taking half of his money. Okay? It's a type of punishments. It's punishing this guy that didn't respect the orders of zakat. Okay. Now, when he says we're going to take it in half of his money, This is was understood in several ways. Does that mean you're going to take half of his property, or half of his camels, or sheep, or rams, or half of what? Well, some said that means we're going to take some of his property, not all of it. And some said no, half of his property. And this means that the government can punish some people by taking a ransom of their money, making them pay some taxes or bills or whatever. It's a type of punishment. And this is what Imam Awza'i says, Imam Ahmad, Ishaq Rahawayh, and the old opinion of Imam Shafi'i. But most of other scholars, like Hanafis, Malikis, new opinion of Imam Shafi'i, the opinion of Imam Ahmad, he says, no, you're not allowed to take people's property to punish them by that. And this is the fatwa in all official madhahib. So that you're not allowed to take people's property, because that is some of that people won't like that. And they said that our evidence is from the Quran, the Sunnah, and lots of narrations. It's something that is obvious that a Muslim's property is sacred. No one is allowed to take anything from it unless he has a permission from God Almighty by the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet. And we don't have any Sahabi that did that, is what they said. But there are answers about that. They said for this hadith, well, this is something that was in the ancient days and then it got abrogated. But who said it became abrogated? Do you have something that proves it was abrogated? This is what the latest say to them. There is no evidence that says that. No one says, where did he get that it became abrogated? Now he says here that in the hadith about this guy's money, this goes back, yeah, they say here that the government has the right to take some of his money. Well, if you say that, that means you agree that you're allowed to take some of the money or to punish somebody by taking some of his money. So all of these answers are not clear answers. And we can criticize every answer of it. But anyway, the evidence that says you're not allowed to take people's property, according to the commentators, he says it's more clear and more authentic. Nowadays we are forced to give and organize all these types of things so that we can have a proper zakat system. Better than having this tax system and stuff like that. And taxes are actually people's property, and no one likes that his money would be people would say that you're not supposed to take people's properties. Are we allowed to punish people by taking their money when we have a strong evidence about that? Well, it says, well, taking property, it's less severe than punishing people by putting them in jail and preventing them from freedom, or from smashing and beating people. If you smash and beat people,
And this is what we can say about this, okay? So therefore, you can find a lot of people that agree about taxes and stuff like that. And you can avoid a lot of taxes by taking the Islamic or implementing the Islamic system, the Islamic how do you call it? Yeah, the Islamic system of money. Wallahu a'lam. Now here it says, وعن علي رضي الله عنه قال ليس في البقر العوامل صدقة, which means that the cows that work, there's no zakat on them. Abu Dawood al-Darqutni said that, well, it's more authentic by Ali. It's more authentic. It's from the words of Ali radiallahu anhu rather than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's like the opinion of Ali radiallahu anhu. It's not from the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are other narrations like that, but all of them are weak. So this hadith means that there's no zakat on the cows that work or the camels that work. You know, they use them by graining, by raining, by other types of things like that. The majority of scholars say no. The majority of scholars say if the animals are fed by eating without paying anything for them, or by so therefore, yeah, the majority of scholars say any animals that you work with them, you need them to work with them. You work by using them to get water from the wells or to use them in farms or whatever. You know, there are some countries that use camels and types of animals. So there's no zakat on these types of animals, as the majority of scholars say. The Malikis say animals, you have to give zakat in any type of animal, no matter it eats by paying money for it, or you just leave it wherever. You just leave the animal and you give zakat on it, no matter you pay money on it or you don't pay money. Okay, so all types of livestock, you give zakat on. The opinion of the majority of scholars is more authentic and more stronger than the majority. Okay, I think here it's enough. And next time we would speak about, but actually, he didn't speak about. He didn't speak about zakat, the ram and goat, stuff like that. I don't know why he didn't speak about that right now. Okay, I'll leave it till next lecture. Here, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Assalamu alaikum.
Did you miss the hadith وعن علي رضي
Yes,
الله
وعليكم
عنه
السلام.
قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كانت لك 100 درهم وحال عليه الحول. I think you skipped this narration.
Yeah, I'll
Maybe
leave it at that.
next time, inshallah.
I didn't skip. No, I didn't skip it. I'll read it next time, inshallah.
Inshallah.
So, Assalamu alaikum.
Layla, you can ask the question. Right,
Yeah. So the concept that we're getting from zakat in general, that the majority agree upon, is more like if you're benefiting from something without putting the effort, for example, animals grazing freely, then and you're benefiting and earning from them, then you purify your wealth by giving zakat. But if you're using them for service purposes or like horses for jihad, then it becomes, I mean, that's the concept I am understanding. And similarly, if there's always this question about zakat on gold that we own, and I always felt that
Yes.
no matter what, I should always pay zakat for whatever, and listening to this, you're going over this again, it now, I'm thinking, if you look at the concept, then in a way, if that gold is not being bought and sold to earn money, and you are using it more for your adornment purposes, then conceptually, I'm just talking conceptually, it seems that then I can understand those scholars who say that there is no zakat applied on that. So that was my first question. I would like your comment on that. And my second one is, especially with us living, or many, not even in, it doesn't mean necessarily matter whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim countries these days, there are taxes we have to pay. And when we pay zakat and taxes, how do we see this? And we may not be able to talk about it today, but maybe in the future, because the purpose of what we are doing is we have to see how we can apply it to our personal daily lives practically. So I would appreciate your comment on those.
Okay, now for anything that you use for your own interest, you don't give zakat on it. I'm going to speak later on, inshallah, about zakats of the garments and stuff like that that women wear and stuff like that. We're going to speak about that. But this is the main idea. The second, what was the second question again?
It was about, when you give taxes also and zakat,
Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do. That doesn't concern the Islamic system, because are something that are not fair, or it can be fair in a way or another, but it's not an Islamic tax, so it doesn't have anything to do with zakat. So zakat, you have to pay it, and tax, deal with your taxes. That's another.
Yeah, I mean, we live in the US, but I think in Europe and in some of the socialized countries where their taxes are much higher, I guess you would, even though it doesn't directly impact the
That's
zakat,
true. That's
the amount you have paid out in taxes would then not count as the assets you are left with. I guess, I don't know, maybe we can talk about this. I'm just mulling that idea in my head of how, if we don't, we may not,
brainstorming.
yes, may not be directly saying that is zakat. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I'm trying to say that that also is going out of your savings, or your whatever yours, at the end of the year, some of that amount goes towards your tax payment.
Yes,
so then
yes.
that's automatically what you're saying is that's automatically withdrawn, but still whatever you have left after that, the same rulings of zakat apply on that, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't have anything to do. You don't omit it from your zakat.
Okay.
Sheikh, just a quick historical question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sheikh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is that you, Ali? Yeah.
Yeah, Sheikh. So you said that some of the
Yes,
ulama, they argued with regards to that last hadith that you can take part or half of a person's wealth if they refuse to pay zakah. Is there any incident during Hurub al-Ridda with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu where he did anything like that? Because it seems like if this was true, then instead of fighting and killing, he would have just taken people's wealth.
No, that's another story, because scholars differentiate between one person that just rebels, and then between an amount of people or a city or a village or whatever that rebels and tries to rebel by using weapons. So in this case, these are not only rebelling, these are apostatizing. That's why Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was very severe with them. But if it was only one person and when they go to him, they tell him you have to pay, he said, no, I don't want to pay. Okay, you don't want to pay, they beat them and take the money from him. That's it. You see? So there's a
Yes.
different case. These are two different cases.
جزاكم الله خير.
Okay. I think yeah, Ibrahim Bukhari. Iran. Bukhari.
Yeah, assalamualaikum. So the lady asked that question about zakat on jewelry. So what do you say on that? I think Hanafi fiqh says that you have to pay zakat on jewelry.
I still didn't
And
speak about jewelry.
sorry,
We didn't speak about that. We'll speak about it later, inshallah.
okay.
We're going to speak about that later, inshallah. We didn't speak about it today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. This is enough for today. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. All right. Give me a sec. We'll start in like 1 minute. I'm just pulling it up. Okay, there you go. Okay. So, as usual, we're not gonna do any translation here. But there are a few conversational points here. So, last week, what we did, one sec. Quick second here. Okay. So just closing some of these tabs. Too many tabs open here. There you go. So last week, we were dealing with a few questions. If you went to we were talking about diversity of religion. Obviously, none of you answered the question because it was too weird. Shah Waliullah was getting onto why we need guides and leaders that have this full knowledge. If you remember that. Yeah. To have this sort of full knowledge. When we're talking about the necessity of prophethood, the main thing that Shah Waliullah is getting at in this section here. So we're kind of covering this area also here. But the main thing that Shah Waliullah is getting at over here is that even though when we're talking about the city, so we're talking about just in general having a person you can refer to, but the city, despite the sense of livelihood, right? What Shah Waliullah is saying is that if you look at it from every angle, there's a necessity of a leader. You need a leader. So even though, for example, in a city, let's talk about a city. Even though many people in a city may have practical intelligence, may have some sort of practical intelligence that has to do with how to live your life. Oh, this is haqiqatun nubuwwah there. This is where we are. This is called al-aql al-ma'ashi. Al-aql al-ma'ashi means some sort of practical intelligence of how to live your life, understand what benefits the city, understand how to do things, understand how to just living your life. The older you get, the more you realize things that are good for the city, things that are not good for a city. There's still a need for a person who can accurately identify and regulate these benefits. And it's important, I feel like what Shah Waliullah is saying, is that it's important that when it comes to living in the city and everything to do with the city, that a prophet should be playing that role as a government individual, which is the first question, is prophethood part of government or no? Should the prophet be government or no? Meaning, should religion and politics be intertwined? This is something to keep in the back of your head. What Shah Waliullah is saying is that, there's still a need, because there might be 5 or 10 different ways of living, but there might be that particular need. So how to accurately identify and regulate the benefits of living properly in a city. And when the community gets larger, with its diverse capabilities, you require not many leaders, but you require one leader who can intimately understand and manage this sort of diversity. We understand this in small, like within a household, you need to have a one person who's in charge, right? You have the nucleus of the family takes care of it. But when we go at a city level, you need to also have one system that's in place, and that system should probably have a leader that's there. So only a few people, what Shah Waliullah is basically saying is only a few people who have the purest and most mature ability can really grasp what is beneficial for such a complex community. In other words, this person cannot be young, this person should be a little bit older. And these leaders are at the highest rank of intellectual and spiritual development, because they directly get the wahi from Allah. But Shah is saying it's necessary that every city has a particular person like this, so that the city or society can live in a proper way. And then Shah Waliullah gives a little analogy. He says, look, you have blacksmiths, you have carpenters, you have craftsmen, you have teachers, artists. They inherit their practice from their ancestors and the masters. So the only time a particular system works in a particular trade is when that practice has been inherited from masters of the science. Does that make sense? When it has been inherited, yeah, it does, from masters. If there's no masters involved in it, that won't continue. For example, if bad art isn't just going to continue, you're going to have good art, and it'll be critique that's going to continue. And what happens is only those, and if we're talking about guiding a community or founding a religion, then this system is going to be something that's going to be based on a system that was successful in the past, were successful people in the past. In other words, a prophet is never going to come and reinvent the wheel. The Quran always says, بِمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا أُنزِلَ مِن قَبْلِكَ. It's going to continue the wheel. It's never going to reinvent the wheel. Humans have been there from before. So only those who are sincere and guaranteed success by God or by Allah are inclined towards the noble pursuits. So Allah specifically chooses people who will probably have a few qualities. Number one, empathy would probably be a huge quality. Empathy. Because they're going to be empathetic towards the prophets or toward the systems of the past that have been successful. And they're going to continue the successful systems. like craftsmen. So Shah Waliullah is basically saying that, therefore, you have these leaders, right? This knowledgeable leader must publicly demonstrate their understanding of the rightly guided practices. A sunnah Rashida or Rashida. Basically, this person should be accepted as someone who is ethical, someone who knows. Whether you talk about Jesus Christ, whether you talk about Prophet Muhammad, doesn't matter. These people were still, people knew that what they're saying, because they were talking about ethics, and that's why people were connected to them. They're talking about living in a happy way. They weren't talking about being misguided. They were talking about being ethical, being happy. And when people start following that way, they're like, oh my God, we're not being cheated of, where everything is fair. So what happens is they must publicly demonstrate that the Prophet ﷺ was known as a Sadiq and al-Amin. So you publicly demonstrate, people were like, oh, we respect the guy, right? You're like, okay, but now he's saying some stuff that's weird, but as for the other stuff, we respect him. So he was free from error. He was free from misguidance in speech, free from misguidance in action. And that's what Shah Waliullah is saying, is that when you're talking about the requirements of a rightly guided leader, they must publicly demonstrate that they're this way, and they must achieve complete rectification but without neglecting any necessary aspects. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ, if you look at society, when he came into Medina, he overturned Medina to such an extent that 1,000 years later, it's still founded on the principles of the Prophet ﷺ. Does that make sense? Like, that's how good the leadership was. Right, you can see this within the Abrahamic religions, that Prophet Isa alayhi salam, how good of a job did he do that Christianity is so popular in the world now, right or wrong? Whether it's correct or incorrect, irrelevant, we don't care about that. Musa alayhi salam, Judaism, so popular in the world now. Whether it's correct or incorrect, that's irrelevant. At the end of the day, people still associate with it. They're like, oh yeah, we're Christian, but like, you're not Christian, you're Protestant. That success is there, right? So what Shah Waliullah is saying is that when it comes to the sources of leaders' authority, the leader may report from a previous person recognized for their perfection and infallibility, that the Quran does this on a regular basis. It acknowledges the religions of the past and the prophets of the past. So this allows for the leader to hold the community accountable based on their beliefs and infallible sources, and to silence any objections using these teachings. The Prophet can't be like, listen, you guys know you're supposed to do this. It's continuing. It's like, you guys know that your ancestors did this as well. They have this knowledge. They'll bring back the old system. They'll be like, see, you're supposed to do it the old way. Alternatively, the leader themselves might be the final authority upon whom the community agrees. So this leader can become the ultimate source of guidance and authority for the community. There are many prophets who would just show up, and they would just show up for the purpose of guidance of a community that completely went off. And people would be like, what's wrong with you? Okay, this guy's good, but got some issues going on over here. So we're not talking about Nabi or Rasul, the theological separation of Nabi versus Rasul. What Shah Waliullah, all he's talking about over here is that he's talking about the necessary reason for why you need a particular person who can do this. So Shah Waliullah is emphasizing the necessity of having a rightly guided leader or a founder of religion who can understand and regulate the diverse needs of a community. And these leaders are going to demonstrate their knowledge and infallibility, either by reporting from an infallible source, look, we're doing what the people did in the past, or by being recognized as final authorities themselves. Eventually they can become a final authority. You're like, oh my God, they're just continuing, and you're the person, you're the authority. So keeping this in mind, the first question I want to ask you guys is simple. The first question I want to ask you guys is very, very simple. Do you think religion and politics should be together, yes or no? What do you guys think? Do you think politics is a part of religion? How many of you say yes, and why would you say that? Because deen means a way of life, and deen, everyone has a deen, including atheists. How many of you think that church and state must be separate? You don't think church and state must be separate? You think it should be together? Or rather the need for above in a healthy society? Can you explain that to me? I don't understand that. I don't understand that. Well, maybe you're reading from on top. Ethics and justice is common to both, or rather the need for above. Yeah, so what are you saying? Are you able to come on the mic and explain it? I'm not understanding.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, in a political system, again, in a way, the political system is a subcategory of religion. And when we think of religion, we think of prophets only. But as somebody mentioned, even atheists have a way of thinking about things. So if you look at that, what is a common thread, if we are looking at good positive qualities, is there need to be an ethical society. There needs to be a just society, a society with empathy for those in need, where truth reigns supreme. So those qualities, we talk about people who may not be Muslims, but they may embrace or embody those qualities. So in dunya, I think those things matter. When it comes to akhirah, then number one, your accounting is individual accounting, and your relationship with God then becomes a private matter. You can't force, and neither did any of the previous Muslim generations. Technically, in the early, when they conquered a land, they didn't make them Muslims, but they installed that system of governance which was ethical and just. So that's what I meant in that sense. Religion does not need to take over the private lives or force people to follow a certain way, and so that needs to be separated. But in a political way, those values need to still, that's where the overlap is. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's how I look at it. There's a private sphere and there is a public sphere, and the public sphere includes ethical system and justice, truthfulness, and the private sphere is, if we look at religion as just relationship to God, then that becomes a more of a private
sphere, yeah.
Yes, so that's how I look at it. When we think we are fixing society by making everybody, do this or do that, we're really not changing hearts. We are imposing rules and regulations, and we see that in Muslim countries all the time. People are made to do things forcefully. The moment even the youth leave that country and they come to where there's no supervision, no parents are not there, let alone God as a figure. They just come out of the influence of physical thing. They do whatever they want to, because it has not sunk in deep enough to their heart. So that is a different matter. And if everybody would do that, and unfortunately that doesn't happen in politics, so that personal sphere is a separate thing between one's relationship with God.
This is also true in Western countries, though, right?
Yes.
Like what Ali is saying, Western countries ban prostitution, but once people go to Thailand, they engage in it. So should prostitution be legal?
Yeah. I mean, so that that shouldn't be legal politically or religiously. I mean, religiously, yes, it isn't, but politically, it doesn't make sense either. But it's values and the people who are allowing this, and for that matter, so many things they talk about. For example, from a medical perspective, they say, make sure and force, not force, but really push the what we call the HPV virus vaccine to minimize cervical cancer. But they don't talk about, why are you not talking about against the behaviors, that lead to that the promiscuous behavior, the behavior with multiple partners, things out of wedlock, things starting early. Those are the things we are not addressing. Those we are putting band-aids. Oh, let us give all these young girls HPV virus so they don't get those sexually transmitted diseases that also predispose them to cancer, cervical cancer. So it's just all backward, in my in that sense.
Yeah. Let's look over here. Anyone disagree? Anyone? Ali, what are you saying? I agree the government should not have the power.
Well, I think that we need a highly structured society, and I think that everything should be regulated in terms of even to some of the granular things that she was saying she doesn't trust the government to do. But I don't think it should be done from the top down. I think it needs to come from the bottom up. In the past, why did people wear hijab? Why did people observe Islamic laws pertaining to marriage and things of that nature? Was it because there was a very strong central government that was going around monitoring everything? No, that wasn't even possible. That only became possible with modern technology. But individual communities self-regulated according to Islamic law, starting from the household on up. So I think that we need all of these regulations. I just don't think that there should be a very powerful central government that's going around or doing it. I think that when people have a very strong faith system, they will self-regulate to a certain degree that will then build upwards, but this still allows individual freedom. And this is why you do see sins in Islamic history. You do see homosexuality and prostitution because there is a self-regulation. And when that self-regulation doesn't happen, the government is not there to breathe down your neck. But overall, the society moves back towards the moral foundations because everybody agrees with them, at least theoretically.
Like a universal system?
What do you mean by a universal system?
Oh, the last thing you said, the last thing.
Yeah, everybody has like the shared system of beliefs that they agree on. So like in the past, people engage in
And then building
homosexuality.
on those shared systems, right?
Exactly. So people engage in homosexuality, but nobody ever said it was halal. So even though they did it, at some point they're like, you know what, this is probably bad. We should stop it. And you didn't need like the equivalent of an Islamic CIA or FBI to come in and raid the prostitution houses. People
Yeah.
eventually come to the conclusion that, you know what, we should stop this. Maybe it takes a generation or two, but there's an ebb and flow and a return back to the Quranic values.
I mean, there was a lot of, I agree with what Brother Ali is saying. There's a lot of, there was faith-based, norms that people followed. And I think part of the problem now is there is, irrespective of whatever the faith is, there is no longer that importance of faith in our life. In a lot of countries, especially the Western countries that are becoming so secular. So that grounding, that was that common, all the prophets that came with the same similar messages, and we think of religion very differently from, code of good conduct and good life. But actually, that's the very purpose of religion, is to, and so those prophets were guides to, and not all of them were the ones we hear. There were 120 something thousand, sent. So that means that this process was going on. There were some people who were, who were more mature and gave that, and we're losing that now. It's because it's everybody is now ego, and our personal desires is rearing its head. So that's where the Medusa head is, the ugly head is rearing its thing. Otherwise, people attempted to, they, even if they had bad, we all have our faults, and people would still try to hide it or do it in secret, or realize it was not the right thing to do, but they just couldn't control it. Like, it could be a simple thing as anger, or a simple thing as sexual deviant behaviors. So those things, that's what's, I mean, in the present age, we are losing all of that grounding, or listening to mature, wise someone. It could have been the prophet, because if it's the prophets, the messengers of God, obviously, then we believe they are coming with divine guidance, which far exceeds what our human intellect may understand as being right or wrong. And so if we believe that, we do that. But then to a lower level than that, there are certain values. Cheating is not considered a good thing, and greed is not considered a good thing. Those were common values, no matter what your religion is. I think even if you're a Hindu and you worship idols, you would still think of those things generally. So
Yeah, it's problematic, right? You there? You disappeared.
I'm there.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Shah Wali Allah. Talk about infallibility. If a leader is considered infallible or free from error, what mechanisms are in place to address potential mistakes or judgments? Like nowadays, we talked about at the time of the Prophet, you had the wahi that would come and fix. But what about nowadays? If you have particular leaders that, or for example, can a system that relies on infallible leadership adapt to changing circumstances and new knowledge, or does it become a risk? Or does it risk becoming too rigid or outdated? Which is what a lot of people are talking about now. I'm not sure what they're talking about. Like they project what the Prophet ﷺ did, but they're talking about the general Islamic system that's in there in the world right now, where they're like, well, it doesn't really adapt to the circumstances of 21st century Islam in the West. Meaning, with globalization, can the Eastern system still be applicable in the West? What do you guys think?
To me, I think that the better question to ask is the way that modern society is set up, number one, is it good? And number two, can it even survive? Because people always say, oh, Islam has to adapt to globalization and modern society. Well, modern society is leading to climate change. The earth is literally on fire. We have a fertility crisis because of modern technology. Is it really that we should adapt, or is it that you guys tried this radical new system and it's about to literally burn the planet and destroy the species?
That's a good question. Is it really burning the planet and destroying species? Probably is, right? But then you have the systems in the West that don't believe that, right?
So, I mean, even they will say that, hey, look, we got the climate change problem and we don't know how to
Yeah, that's
stop
what I'm talking about, yeah.
and we know we have the fertility crisis and we don't know what to do about it. So, if you guys have caused all these problems in such a short period of time, why would I want to adapt Islam to what you guys are doing? It seems like what you guys are doing is pretty messed up. It's not working.
So what's the solution to that then?
Well, it looks like they're just gonna destroy everything. No, we just gotta reestablish Islam after the collapse. I mean, it's
Just
not
wait
looking
till
good.
wait till it goes down. Then,
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going pretty well.
no. Anyone disagree?
No, Sheikh, in fact, what I would say is to what Ali said, actually spreading the good things about taking care of environment, taking care of nurturing your environment, families, all of that. That is, with even if you don't label it Islam, that is Islam. That is all part of Islam. And we think it has to be all or nothing. Either you say La ilaha illallah and that, and then but again, there is a differentiation between communal things and then those individual things. And again, even within a Muslim society, or people who claim to be Muslims, to some extent, there is, unless there are punishments, whenever something has a communal implication, either in behavior or the individual matters, you let that between God, but the other things are the same. Islam teaches you how to live life, and what Islam is basically doing is taking God as your ultimate, the wise, the guide, the ultimate, and his, so to speak, CEOs he has sent on earth, or to take care of matters in this world. So that is Islam, and that's what the communal systems of those communalistic society embraced. And I think what is needed, and what a lot of these people living in the West society who are suffering from anxiety, from depression, loneliness is a big thing, extremely big thing everywhere. And these materialistic gains have not brought contentment and peace to human life. It has left them more afraid at the edges, and and all the problems psychological that we see, mental illnesses, suicide. I mean, there are multiple levels to this, gun violence for that matter. It doesn't start with that individual. It starts from how societies are being raised, what they're being fed, how the stresses on their life. So it has a lot of applications, even if we take away the name Islam from it, that needs to be addressed.
No, Lubna, what are you saying? Okay. I had another question then. This was an interesting question that stirred up when I was looking at this. Is it realistic to expect that everyone will follow a single infallible source or leader? And how do you deal with dissenting voices or different voices? What should we do? Because you're always going to have differences, right? And is it actually possible that everyone's going to come on board into one system, or no? I'm just I'm writing these questions down to put it up. So I wrote down this question again. So you have a large community. Is it realistic to expect that everyone will agree on a single infallible source or infallible leader? Is that a realistic thought? But then dissenting voices do not lead to healthy discussion. Dissenting voices lead to, what is it? Dissenting different voices lead to blasphemy laws. I mean, how do you work around that? How would the Prophet do things differently when there was dissenting voices? Was there dissenting voices at the time of the Prophet? And how did the Prophet deal with it? What do you guys think? Because over time, what has happened is these dissenting voices became their own theological systems, right? And then now you had different theological groups. What did the Prophet do for these dissenting voices what did the Prophet do for these dissenting voices that we should do, or should we not do, or should we allow? What do we do? There are voices now in Islamic theology or within Islam. Or do you think that Shah Waliullah is talking from a very romanticized version, right? That they don't really hold up in a modern pluralistic society. Shah Waliullah is talking about a system when you had a system that was, you can have a leader and they can implement punishment, but over here now you have a system that is all about allowing different voices, more of a postmodern-ish type of a thing. What do you guys think? You guys don't have much to say on this, huh? Okay. Different groups have different levels of influence, depends on how much influence. So let's look at a critical thinking question here. Do you guys agree with the analogy that Shah Waliullah is making regarding noble pursuits and crafts and the necessity of guidance and having the necessity of prophets? What do you think? Do you feel like in order for the world to succeed now you need to reestablish prophethood maybe? Not prophethood, but it won't be prophethood, it would be khilafah. How many of you, what do you think about that? Some sort of idea to reestablish the khilafah. What do you think of that? Where khilafah doesn't necessarily mean some sort of party that's out there to kill everyone, but some sort of beautifulized prophetic style khilafah. What do you guys think of that? Dr. Farzana, explain that to me, because a lot of people would be on board of having some sort of khilafah there.
You know, they talk about the political system of having a government that is, you know, I think their goal is so focused on that. I think they have noble aspirations, but I just feel that you can have an Islamic type society even without having an Islamic government on top. And it starts, and I think Brother Ali just mentioned something about that. It's we are so focused on khilafah and getting into politics to create that khilafah that I think the ground level work of changing hearts and minds is not happening. And I think even though, yeah, it's not a simple answer. It's really complicated. There are many levels and nuances to it, but I just feel like we can't force it from top down. It has to start at an individual level. It starts from a family, you know, teaching parents how to be parents with their children, that nurturing development. That's why, you know, our youth are leaving Islam is because of we are, you know, we don't teach them the spirit of Islam. We just teach them ritualistic practices. That's why many of us have understood Islam after having left so-called Islamic countries. And in the West, we have the allowance to think and critically talk about these things and understand different perspectives. So there are many levels, but what I'm saying is we have seen that sometimes the top-down approach doesn't work, and you can blame the fact that it was because the top is rotten. I don't know, but I just feel it has to be, you know, hearts changing. That's why the Prophet ﷺ dua was always Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubuna ala dinik. You know, it's about the hearts, you know, and if that's why you don't want to force your children either. They have to make their decisions. They have to use their aql and their qalb, and they have to come to an understanding, and then you give them the tools, but you don't force it. You tell them the right way, but you don't force it, because the reward is according to your niyyah and what you're trying to achieve. If you explain that, then you know your outcome and your reward is according to that. Otherwise, you can have there's a book, actually, I forget, my children did this in school. It's about how the society was controlled so much, and how this one person, I don't know if somebody remembers it, I'm sure it's a common book that many people read, how this one individual starts to think differently, and you know, begins to think out of the box.
What was the name of the book again? I'm gonna pull it up.
I asked my daughter. It was very, I think at her level, they were in school. It probably didn't hit them the
That's
depth,
hard.
you know, but when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, you know, this is somebody with, you know, very deep. I'll ask my daughter.
Is it on political theology?
No, it was not. It was just public school, high school. Let me ask my daughter if she remembers. I'm just going to mute the phone. Yeah.
Ali, what are you saying? 99% of Muslims aren't ready for Khilafah. Why do you think so? Why do you think they're not ready for Khilafah nowadays?
They're not ready So I think that if the Khilafah was actually established and they were living under it, the religious Muslims would be fine. That's not really the issue. The issue is that what does it actually take to establish a Khilafah? And and we talked about this, Sheikh, with Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Khaldun, when he talks about establishing or the stages, you talked about this also in classical medicine, the stages of society. The first one requires extreme asabiya, like in-group, almost fanaticism, and the degree of tawahush, of a lot of like firmness and roughness. And the simple matter is that a lot of Muslims are not realistic about the kind of sacrifices and also the kind of people that would be able to actually establish a khilafah. It's not going to be university academics with degrees that are pampered and they have to have their morning coffee by 9 a.m. You
The
know, look,
liberal arts people.
yeah, these, you're not going to write a PhD thesis and this is going to establish the khilafah. If you look at the Sahaba and the kind of lifestyle that they had, and what they went through and what they did to establish the Khilafah, it's pretty gruesome. And the simple reality is that, if you're scared to see blood, then you're going to pass out. You're not going to establish the Khilafah. And you're probably also not going to like the people that establish the Khilafah because most of them are going to be that kind of rough. Like, look at Umar ibn al-Khattab.
Yeah.
Umar ibn al-Khattab is not somebody that, is going to be chilling at Harvard and having a cerebral philosophical discussion. He's probably going to smack you with a stick if you even try to bring that up with him.
But that's what people don't want because we're all heading towards the more liberal arts.
Yeah, soft. Oh, we can establish the Khilafah by singing Kumbaya. I don't think that that's realistic. I don't think that it's going to go down like that.
So conservative styles. I'm just kidding. I know what you mean though. The principles of Islam should be the core values of each household regarding it's you know what Dr. Farzana said at the beginning, you can't really implement a lot of these on a private level. Public level, sure, but not on a private level. Doesn't make any much sense. It doesn't make sense. Khilafah is interesting. The reason the Muslim community, I don't know, maybe the reason why many of the people in the Muslim community don't really want the Khilafah is because they would hijack the whole aspect of the Muslim's life, right? And then all of a sudden you're living under a stick. Blasphemy laws. I don't know, but was that how the Prophet was at the time of the Prophet?
Sheikh, I think one of the reasons why I would be afraid of the Khilafah is because we cannot have somebody like the Prophet ﷺ now. And the rest of us human beings are all fallible and prone to, some may be prone to fanaticism. We have seen that in the Muslim history after the Prophet ﷺ. It's not always been that Islamic values. I mean, we say the mehna, for instance, so that is what, you will have the Khilafah, but you will still have those problems because humans are fallible and there's no prophet who's going to be in our midst at that time.
We are meant to be messengers of the messenger. I think all Khalifas failed. Later on, not the Khalifa Rashidin. I'm talking about the later ones. The ones that came after the Abbasids. I think they all completely failed.
I think what was good back then is that you actually didn't need a successful Khalifa to have a successful Khilafah. So the Khalifa could have been a horrible mismanager. He could have been sinful. But because the power was not so centralized, the society could still be great without the Khalifa. And even if he was oppressive, he only had so much power to oppress so many people.
Yeah, Ibn Taymiyyah talks about that.
So I understand why some people are nervous having a Khilafah because they think it's going to be like a police state. But I think that's the wrong way to look at it. It should be an Islamically structured society with heavy limitations on the central authority. Actually, Wa'il Hallaq, he's a Christian, but he wrote a very interesting book He actually is very sympathetic to Islam. He's a very interesting guy. He has a book called The Impossible State. I'm sure Sheikh Uthman has heard about it. I don't know if anybody else has taken a look at it. But I think he makes a lot of good points in that book.
What's it? I'm just writing this on Impossible State.
Impossible State by Wael Halak.
Oh. Is it impossible but inherently self-contradictory concept?
Yeah, the entire idea of Khilafah is contradictory to the idea of a Westphalian nation state. They don't go together. And I understand this is why some people are afraid to bring the Khilafah into the 21st century, because they think that, oh, it's going to be all of the laws of the Sharia with the oppression of a modern nation state. But in reality, it's supposed to be the opposite.
I'll take a look at that book. What do you guys think of one final question? Do you guys agree with Shah Waliullah always talking about there's a necessity of having a rightly guided leader or a founder of religion who can deeply understand and regulate the diverse needs of a community? And then such leaders must demonstrate their knowledge and infallibility, or either reporting by an infallible source or by being recognized as the final authority. So this is going to ensure that the community follows a complete and error-free system. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with Shah Waliullah? I think that I don't know if I agree with Shah Waliullah. Like, I agree with what he's trying to say, what he's trying to get at. I'm still a little bit hesitant to not separate church from state. I mean, not separate it. Like, I feel like church and state must be separated, but I just don't know how. I know a lot of people who have been hurt by the non-separation of church and state, right? They do. That's the thing, right? So I guess I'm looking at it from that perspective, where people have been hurt by the church within a church and state system, right? You know what I mean? Because some people have actually been hurt by that. It does. No. I agree, Ali. So that's the thing. That's what I'm trying to say, is that this system or that system both completely separated. So I talk to my partner, for example, and she always tells me that church and state have to be separated. And the reason she says church and state have to be separated is because like, she's a firm believer in church, and I picked her brain a little bit on that, and she said there's no point of having church and state together. But again, she's talking about her own experience about having the church actually come and, like, physically abuse her. But then I get that, but then at the same time, the secularism in the other perspective, it's like, well, you also have the system. The secular system is probably imposing certain ideas down your throat as well. Everyone is. But how about keeping religion private instead of having it public? Was it private, public, meaning, how about having religion be a private thing and governance? But I don't even know, is that even possible to have a church system that doesn't follow religion? For example, if you were to run for government right now, can you actually overhaul the whole system, get rid of the whole thing, and then start up a new system? I don't even know. What is your prototype, right? What is the prototype at this point? It's interesting. The religion is democratic capitalism. I know, that's the thing, right? Because when you look at the original Islamic system, you're like, okay, it's a perfect system. It's really good, because in an Islamic system, was it permissible for you not to be Muslim? Yes or no? That's the thing, right? That's the crazy part. In an original Islamic system, it was permissible for you not to actually be a Muslim. You just paid the jizya, right or wrong? But in a non-Islamic system, that wasn't the case. I know, right? You had these crazy people there. Anyways, so this is good discussions that we're having. Next week we're going to continue. We're going to move ahead. So that what we talked about today was up to here. So we started from here, قال الله تعالى, and then we've reached here, وأجمعوا عليه. So next week we're going to go from وبالجملة فلا بد للناس من رجل معصوم يقع عليه الإجماع يكون. We're going to summarize this a little bit, and I'll have a few more questions on this topic here. But what we're talking about here is باب الحاجة إلى هداة السبل ومقيم الملل. The necessity of having a leader. So we're gonna get into the discussion of khilafah, but we need a leader. So okay, awesome. Take care. Yeah, I know, but no one wants to register separately for these. Anyways, we'll talk next week, inshallah. All right. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.